There's a gory and horrific Scandinavian folktale about a girl who marries a snake that surprisingly can be read through a queer lens and is somewhat trans-affirming. It's called King Lindworm, and there are three main versions attributed to Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. I'm going to be talking about all of them. All three start the same way. As is often the case, a king and a queen can't have kids. And one day the queen goes out walking and meets a woman. In the version from Norway, she's straight up a witch, but the nice kind of witch, not the cantankerous kind. The witch gives the queen a white rose and a red rose. She says if you eat the red rose, you'll have a son. If you eat the white rose, you'll have a daughter. So you get to pick the gender, but you cannot eat both. Don't eat both. But people never listen to witches and fairy tales, and she eats both. She eats the white one first, choosing the girl, but then it tasted so good, she's like, I gotta eat the red one too, and so she does. She gives birth to twins, and one is a healthy boy, and the other is a lindworm, or a serpent. In some versions, the lindworm slithers away on its own, and some, the servants just throw it out the window, but either way, it goes off. The human prince grows up, and then one day the dad's like, all right, son, go out and find yourself a bride. But he heads off in his carriage and is cut off by the lindworm, who says, hey, I'm your older sibling, I get to get married first, you can't get married till I do, so tell your parents that they gotta arrange this now. So there's nothing for the king to do except to find a bride for the lindworm, so he writes to a foreign king and says, hey, would you send a daughter to marry my son? But he doesn't say which son. She wasn't allowed to see her bridegroom until the ceremony, and then when she realizes it's a snake, it's too late for her to say no. They go to the bridal chamber, and the next morning, she's not there, because he ate her. The human prince tries to go off again, but the lindworm's like, no, you need to get me another bride. And so the same thing happens a second time. The dad writes to another bride, they trick her into marry him, he eats her on the wedding night. The lindworm demands to be married again, but now everyone knows what's up, so no other kings want to give up their daughters. So the king goes to a poor shepherd and he's like, hey, give me your daughter and I'll make you rich for the rest of your life. And he's like, no, I don't want my daughter to die. But the king would not take no for an answer, so he had to give him his daughter. The lindworm marrying and eating two foreign princesses before finally getting a shepherd's daughter happens in the Norwegian version and the version from Denmark. In Andrew Lang's version from Sweden, he first eats a bunch of slaves. He doesn't marry them, he just snatches them up and eats them in the castle until finally this wicked stepmother offers up her daughter because she hates her and wants to get rid of her. In all of the cases, he eventually ends up with this third wife, where things will of course go differently. The shepherd's daughter runs out into the woods crying when her dad says, hey, I have to marry you to this snake that's gonna eat you. And she meets an old witch, and it doesn't say if it's the same old witch, but come on, it probably is. And she tells her what to do to save her life. She says when you go to the bridal chamber after the wedding, you have to wear 10 white shifts, or like underdresses. You need a tub full of lye, a tub of fresh milk, and as many whips as you can carry. I don't know what kinky things the servants must have thought she was up to when she asked for all these things to be brought to the bridal chamber. Then the witch tells her when the lindworm says to take off your clothes, you take off one layer of your dresses. Then tell him you need to slough off one layer of his skin in return. When all his skins are off, you must dip the whips in lye and whip him, then wash him in the fresh milk, and lastly, take him and hold him in your arms. The girl's like, that sounds awful, and she's like, trust me. So the girl's like, well, I don't know what else I can do, so sure. So she follows the instructions, and in the bedroom that night, when the lindworm says, fair maiden, take off a shift, she says, fair lindworm, slough a skin. He says, no one has dared tell me to do that before, but he has to do it, and he groans and moans and casts off the skin. So they go through taking off the layers of clothes and the layers of skin, his eyes rolling furiously, but the girl was no longer afraid. Eventually, there's 9 dresses and 9 shifts lying on the floor, and nothing was left of the lindworm but a huge, thick mass, most horrible to see. The girl seized the whips, dipped them in lye, whipped him as hard as he could, bathed him in the milk, dragged him to bed, and put her arms around him. And of course, in that moment, he transforms into a hot man. When the servants came in the morning, they found her fresh and rosy, lying beside the handsomest prince anyone could ever wish to see, because we're assuming they had a good night. The Norwegian version that I've mostly been telling you ends at this point. Andrew Lang's version and the version from Denmark go on. They have a whole second half that happens in lots of folklore where the girl's giving birth to the king's baby, and then the evil stepmom like sends letters to him at war saying that she gave birth to puppies or something. She needs to flee the palace until the king Lindworm comes home and like realizes he's been lied to and everyone is saved. And the evil stepmother who's been added gets punished. The Danish version only ever has one prince. She just gives birth birth to the snake and no other. But the other versions where there's two princes is where it becomes an interesting queer or trans reading. If you follow the magic the witch said about the two birth-inducing roses, the Lindworm should be born female, or at least assigned female at birth. But the story genders the Lindworm as male, using male pronouns, calling him a prince. You could read this story with the Lindworm being either a lesbian or a trans man. He's not a good person. I mean, there's no justification for princess eating, but the story doesn't paint the Lindworm as the villain. The Lindworm marries the girl and is the king in the end. They are the hero. It frames the Lindworm as a product of the disgust and fear of society, the horror that everyone feels as soon as it comes out of the queen, because of something it can't control, the way it was born. Really, this story, no matter what lens you look at it through, is about the grotesque and brutal process of transformation. Like most fairy tales, it doesn't happen with a kiss or with a magic wand. It's bloody. It takes effort and ritual and physical pain. And that's often how it can feel, figuring out who you are or transforming yourself into the person you want to be or were meant to be. That's the great thing about folklore. It's just ambiguous enough that you can interpret it in so many ways and maybe reimagine it in a lot of ways. I'd love to see this made into a reimagined book or movie. What do you think?